Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today we are at the home of a very famous artist, Billy Schenck. We probably won't be talking too much about his art today, but we will be talking about a new book he published based on his pottery. Thank you for having us in your home today, Billy.
Well, you're more than welcome.
I think I'm going to sit down by you and we can go through some of this. Okay, so this is Billy and his latest book. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to educate our fan base, Blue Rain Gallery, or any others that are interested in prehistoric pottery. This book, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the foremost books ever written on prehistoric pottery dating from 700s to the 1600s. Mm-hmm. And it's well documented with beautiful photographs and everything. Billy, tell us a little bit about this book.
Well, let me just start with saying that my passion, other than painting, since I was a little kid, was archaeology and paleontology. And over the last 50 years, I have actually, since 1964, I became involved with prehistoric pottery from the Southwest. I became a real active collector in 1975. And as I accumulated, bought and sold and restored prehistoric pottery, it occurred to me and to another archaeologist friend of mine, Matt Thomas, who is a mentor of mine in this book, we began to discover we could possibly identify individual artists purely by their signature style. And that, for this book, really got my attention. And the more I did research and studying, I discovered that every dynamic about these women, and it was exclusively women who made these pots up until around 1915.
So what's the title of the book?
The title is Women Artists of the Ancient Southwest.
Yeah.
And all the dynamics I was saying of, how you become an artist, what an artist does, and how they get inspired, where they appropriate from other artists or even other cultures, all the same dynamics are true of these women. In every aspect, they're human being artists just like every other group, every other culture, historically, from the birth of civilization and recorded history on.
I think that's referenced in the introduction of the book.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah.
So just as right in the first pages, as an example, I put on the left-hand side schools of art. And I dated the different schools that were prominent from high Renaissance all the way up to contemporary 21st century. And one of the things that's real obvious is some of these schools of painting would exist for maybe 2 generations, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 or 8 generations. And the exact same thing existed in all of the prehistoric cultures of the Southwest. And the dating is the same thing. It's, here's a culture that was prominent with a style of painting for 2 generations. Here's another one that lasted 6 generations. So I found that really incredible. The other thing I wanted to do is I've read all this archaeology over the years. Being a visual person, I would read things like the depopulation of the Four Corner country, beginning at around 1285 AD and pretty much disappeared.
Chaco culture?
Chaco, Mesa Verde, all of that. And I didn't know exactly what that meant until I saw this chart, and I blew this up, and what they are is the maps from 1200 to 1500 AD, and by the time you get to 1500, you can see visually, oh my God, there is a depopulation. There's nobody left except at Hopi and at Zuni, which is just right on the border of both New Mexico and Arizona. And what's left of the prehistoric populations have concentrated up and down the Rio Grande, and that's the pueblos that we know of today. So that's a pretty fascinating thing to see. The other thing I talk about in the book are the circumstances in which these women lived and painted. First of all, they were making this art outdoors. They couldn't work indoors because there was no indoor lighting. So they're subjected to the elements. This is unlike European artists who were able to paint inside and with windows and having controlled, regulated northern light. The women could also only make pottery at certain times of the year because of the weather elements. And it's just amazing to me that these women could take the time and the energy to make these ceramics with painted, maybe decoration or whatever, but to such a sophisticated level. And this is true particularly of the greater artists within the community who would rise to the top. And their pieces are easier to recognize, just the same as if we go into a museum and we see a Picasso, we see a Warhol, a Rembrandt, because it's so significant and so specific a style.
Signature-esque is what I call it, right?
A signature, well, it is a signature style. Yeah. And these women had the same thing. So as we go on, at some point, I'll show you examples that I have in my personal collection where we have 2, possibly 3 or 4 examples of that same artist's work.
That's amazing because you think about the distance of time going back,
right?
And trying to associate it, but then you see something very similar and it's easy to maybe connect that, but you really have to look around.
Yeah, in order to do this, you have to be intimately familiar with thousands and thousands of prehistoric ceramic objects. There's really no other way you can do that. You can do it with photographs of imagery as well as, having the specific ceramic in front of you. And I would venture to say these women would have gotten a much higher stature and more attention, particularly let's talk about like the Memz geometric painters. That they are hard edge abstract artists, and I think they're the most sophisticated of any culture at any time in the history of the world. And the only reason I don't have the same recognition is they did not paint on flat canvases that were rectilinear. They painted on objects. So that, demeans them in the eyes of historians. It just doesn't give them the due that they're.
Well, it's an amazing collection, and maybe we should just start walking around and look at some of those examples.
Okay.
And then we can pop up references as we go along in the podcast.
Okay.
So let's start with the Hokam.
Yeah. I'll take the book with me just as I have a reference.
It's so heavy. It's like lifting a weight.
This is the one thing I was trying not to do, was create a brick.
Yes.
And it's 7.1 pounds.
It's a brick.
It is a brick.
I know the shipping costs on that.
It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Just because of the weight.
Yep. So I started the book with the Hokam culture, which were indigenous to both the Tucson and Phoenix area. And this is the one generation the one culture where it's difficult to actually recognize a single artist. I make the reference in my book that they're very much like Detroit was the auto industry. These people, the artists were all located at Snaketown, which is just south of Phoenix on the Gila River. And they produced literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pots. And then they were distributed out to all the other outlying communities within the Hokam culture.
So were these utilitarian or were they ceremonial?
I don't know about ceremonial. It's hard to, they definitely were used. They are utilitarian. But the great thing about this, I'll come back around to the fact that they are painted, and these artists, knowing that the attrition rate for this great art that they're making could be 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years. Unlike Western civilization artists, we do something on canvas and we automatically expect it's going to be
permanent.
It's going to be there for 1,000 years. And not only that, it might be in a museum.
Yeah.
These women still had the wherewithal, the ego, and the confidence to make these incredible things, knowing that they weren't going to be permanent.
Pretty amazing, for sure. The imagery is really refined. The fine line paintings, the imagery.
And then there's examples, like, for instance, when I talk about cultural appropriation, the Hokam actually totally impacted the Memz culture. There are just so many different things that
I noticed by some of these images over here, very similar.
And you see this format here, I call it, well, it's a rectangle in the middle, but coming down are these rectilinear abstracted objects, but they're creating what I call a Y-bar existence. Mm-hmm. And this would become popular as the Hokam influenced the Kayenta branch of the Anasazi, and that's clearly the north of Flagstaff. So they impacted the black and white tradition.
So the original colors of these, what would they have been? Black and white?
No,
or red.
The Hokam was always red on buff.
Oh, red on buff.
Yeah, and this is a really low-fired pottery.
Oh, really? Like what temperatures? Like about 1,000?
Less than that. It's
wow.
900.
And it lasted that long without disintegrating?
Well, it crumbles easier. I mean, there's these people made hundreds of thousands of pots, and I would say percentage-wise, there's less of their...
Because of that?
Yeah, because they would just crumble. Now, later on, behind you over here, this is these three pieces are Salado culture.
Sorry, which three?
These three right here.
The really black and white ones.
Yeah. And they date from 1300 to 1450, and they also are low-fired pottery. Although they do seem to...
That is surprising me that they've lasted that long at that temperature. So some of the Pueblo potters fire really low.
Yeah.
And you just drip some water and it's like whoosh.
Right.
Right?
I may be wrong, but I know it's the lowest fired pottery there is. The highest fired pottery is Hopi. When they gravitated to the Hopi mesas at around 1275 AD, they quickly discovered the coal seams that were exposed. And that was the first prehistoric ceramics that got coal fired. I mean, it's still pit.
So it was hot.
Well, it could go to 15, 1700. Mm-hmm. And that's like porcelain. I mean,
even with wood, you can get up to 1300.
Can you? Even with wood?
So you probably could get in the 2000 range.
Yeah, but if you get it too hot, it's going to turn to glass.
Yeah.
It's just, you're going to melt.
You got to find that happy spot.
Exactly. So we'll head on into... let's see, the next group that I talk about is actually the Memz. So let's go see Memz work, because that's the next cultural group that I got influenced by it.
I'm going to run the lamps up.
Okay. Let's open this.
So these are his Memz bowls.
Yeah, the Hokam, began having a real influence on what would become the Memz culture roughly around 850, 900 AD. And I don't have anything of that era in this collection. All I'm interested in really are the Renaissance artists, and everything in this room, everything in this collection of Memz pretty much dates from 1060 to 1130 AD. 2 generations of really great artists, much the same way as Italy produced, the high Renaissance from 1450 to 1500.
So one thing I noticed about Memz especially, and obviously the influence from Hokam, was the pictorial life, the lifestyle. To me, it was like their canvas of what was going on in their everyday life. And that's something that I enjoy mostly about it.
And they're the only culture that really did document all aspects of their real life, their ceremonial, their religious, their mythological. I mean, there's all kinds of mythologies, but I don't know how you translate,
right.
A lot of what that iconography means.
And then they're also talented in the geometric forms, which you have up here.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah, and here's an instance. where I say these two bowls were made by the same woman. If you take a look at how the thing curves, that element curves, and it comes down with that zigzaggy kind of element, there's another style of it right here. And I've discovered, after I did the book, both of these are in the book.
Yeah, nice.
But right after that, I found another group of photographs I had, and here's another.
And you found another example?
And then I got photographs from the Nan collection, which is in Silver City. God, there's a fourth example that I found among those. So that's exactly the process that I had to arbitrarily stop in doing the book because I just kept finding
I really
more
found that
examples.
interesting, that how you put that two and two together, because you're going back thousands of years.
Right.
And just cognitively recognizing distinct styles of painting or structure itself.
But we do it when we look at auction catalogs, you and I, and we say, oh, you know,
we
gosh,
know who that is.
Yeah, without looking at the name.
That's
the
a Billy Schenck
attribution.
painting right there.
Well, there's Dennis Zeminski. Oh, you know, this is the same thing. Once you become familiar with this stuff, it becomes easier and easier to identify, if there's more than one example that exists. Now, I also suggest that in some cases, the really great artists, there would be more examples because of their work in existence, because of her popularity. Everybody would want her bowls.
Yeah.
For this reason, for that reason. Oh, we got a feast over here today, and I want to have, and there's one right here. This lady.
There was a commercial aspect maybe, or a collecting aspect to it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. These people collected as much as we do.
Yeah.
I suggest there's at least 25 known examples of this woman's work.
Wow.
That I've seen in other books and all that. And it's the same thing the same dynamic is true when you're a really good artist, you're sought after.
For sure.
And
Yes.
if you're a mediocre artist, your career is going to be short and gone.
It's
And
just-
that's what happened prehistorically.
It's just interesting. I never conceived that as with those pottery pieces, because you were digging them out of the dirt or whatever, It's amazing.
They had this, people loved their work, and others, oh yeah, she's not quite as good. I'm not interested in owning hers. Now, you also have to keep in mind that we estimated there's approximately 100,000 prehistoric ceramics from the Southwest in existence, both mint and restored. And that probably represents 1/10 of all the prehistoric pottery that was made in the Southwest. This is excluding Hokam. That was Detroit. That was a factory.
That's before depopulation, when it was vibrant,
Yeah.
right?
So it's interesting that with only 1/10 of the pottery known, that you can still identify an individual artist. By
I
the few
noticed you have
examples
a
that
couple
exist.
of ladles too.
Yeah.
Utilitarian formats,
Yep.
which are really cool.
And not all the cultures made ladles. The Hokam did not have this shape. They used scoops. The Ladles culture, 1300 to 1450, I've only known of one ladle. The Membrace, no ladles. All you see is bowls and an occasional jar.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The other thing too is Mesa Verde, they built mugs like it was going out of style.
Yeah, there's a lot of mugs for it.
Zillion mugs. And you think, well, okay, how come everybody else didn't catch, oh, wow, the Mesa Verde are making mugs. These are cool. We can drink our coffee. We can drink whatever with mugs. But it didn't become that popular outside of the Mesa
Out of
Verde.
Mesa Verde. Mhm.
So,
Not even into Chaco.
no.
That's amazing. That's pretty close.
Right. Well, the Chaco, after it collapsed at around 1130, about the exact same time as the Membrace collapsed, they went north.
Yeah.
They became integrated with the Mesa Verde. And you can see it at Farmington and Aztec at the big
Yeah.
Pueblo 3 sites there.
Yeah.
In this corner of this room, these are all Kayenta Anasazi, which, it dates from approximately 1000 AD to 1285.
And where's the geological
This would be up in
region?
the, which is now Navajo country mostly, in southern Utah, but mostly it's a San Juan drainage. It's everything north of the Little Colorado
Yeah.
River. It's all northern Arizona. And so this would be some of the earliest, Black Mesa, Dagoshi, these data.
Storage jars.
Yeah, these big storage jars. Now here's another example. I'm going to show you this cup.
Oh, that's cool.
was made by the same lady who made this jar. And these are real late in the culture. When they moved into Sedgwick Canyon, into the cliff dwellings, the pottery they were painting became more and more and more negative, positive style. And when I was talking about the Y-bar existence in Hokam, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is here. And there are two artists that I've identified as really being the premier, Renaissance artist of the late Canta. And I want to say this late great stuff was made from 1262 to 1286. And that was it.
Well, imagine the journey of influence from the south to this is probably the furthest north.
Yeah.
Kayenta. Mm-hmm. And that influence of the bar design going up. That's just amazing.
Yep. These people could walk. Steve Lexon is a really famous archaeologist, and his mantra is everybody knew everything. Mm-hmm. And I think he's right. I mean, even in spite of the fact there were no horses yet, these people walked everywhere. And they had their own, like we have freeways with semis carrying goods and products back and forth across the U.S. Well, there were trade routes that, individuals would move from one community to another, and they would have burden baskets, and in some cases as many as 75 or 80 pots, mostly smaller vessels, like bowls, on their back. And it was all tradeware to go out. The Hopi Jettato tradeware was traded everywhere throughout Arizona.
Wow.
And that was at 1300.
Well, you had, what's interesting, you had cultural trade centers along those routes.
Yep.
Up from all the way down in the Phoenix area to
and along these trade routes, we now have flying, what it was, flying J's or whatever you call it, the truck stops.
Oh, yeah, the truck stops.
Yeah, well, so there's another similarity where, we have all these truck stops along the freeways in the contemporary highway system. Well, in their trade route system, they also would cache at certain locations pots with grain, with water, and up in the sides of talus slopes on rim rock.
Yeah.
And once you'd figured out what the trade routes were, you'd see these pots just all along these routes.
It's amazing.
Everywhere. So they had the same thing going on as we do.
Yeah. Doing commerce.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, we should talk about, see, these are examples of.
No, this is Chaco.
Oh, this is Chaco, yeah. And Chaco was, we were talking about Mesa Verde mugs, right? But I guess there's some examples
the Mesa
of Chaco.
Verde had mugs. I mean, just like our coffee mugs.
Yeah.
These I call pitchers because they're tall necks.
Okay.
And Mesa Verde, they're just like the cups that we use every day. And this particular Chaco pitcher is the most famous Chaco object in existence. It was first published in 1972 in National Geographic magazine. Wow. And then it has been published in any number of archaeology books since then.
I love the fine line designs. This is really cool.
This is one of the few Chaco artists that's very recognizable. She would do all this hatching and these very rigid, formal designs, but with this little loop, that's her signature.
Wow.
And I found 4 other pictures
like that
of hers, of her work.
Wow. Okay, I was cruising through Billy's house and I recognized this pot as very special for some reason. Why is it so special?
It seems to be universally recognized as one of the greatest examples of any culture from the prehistoric Southwest. This is from Central Arizona. It's a Tularosa, black on white, and this one dates specifically around 1300 to 1325. It's at the very end of this culture. The Tularosa type started at maybe around 1100, but
yeah, what makes it so special?
Well, it's so formal, and the person who restored this actually counted. These are stylized parrots facing each other.
Oh, yeah.
And she goes from a very small scale and just starts slowly coming up bigger and bigger as you get down on the shoulder, and it goes back to being smaller. And these are all perfect in terms of scale all the way around. They
the
don't
symmetry.
the symmetry. And he counted 1,300 parrots.
1,300.
Yeah.
I also like the corrugated lip on that. That is awesome. That is a beautiful example. One of the best ever.
And the shape is really dynamic. I mean, it's like,
Bulbous.
real flat and bulbous, like a pumpkin shape. They can tend to be larger
Bigger.
and rounder like a basketball, but this seems to have more elegance.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to over here.
We'll take a look at these effigies. Okay, these three examples are effigies that were made by one woman, and she was a Pinedale artist from 1275 to 1325. Again, only 2 generations. And she made antelopes. And obviously, she was popular because there aren't any other real Pinedale type effigies in existence, just her stuff. Here's another example of, this is Sityaki, so this is his Hopi from roughly 1450 to 1550 AD. And her style is very recognizable. I know of 6 other examples of her work. They were all found at different Pueblo 4 sites throughout central Arizona. And so everybody seemed to, at one village, needed to have one of her pieces. So her stuff got treated.
Popular. Mm-hmm.
This piece, I was telling Leroy earlier, first of all, its significance is this is Pinedale, black on white, same era as the polychrome antelope. This is a young mallard, just beginning flight. But what's significant is it's the only 2-legged effigy in existence in the prehistoric Southwest. There are no others.
Wow.
And this is the one I waited 46 years to get.
Billy is a hunter-gatherer.
So, and it's got restorations. It's not perfect, but boy, I knew it was something to be had.
Something special.
Yep.
Okay, is there anything else you want to talk about in here?
Just over here, I was going to, we'll take this out for a second. These two in the book, this is a Salado artist. This is Gila polychrome. This dates from roughly 1300 to 1400. And there was just one woman, and these all came from the same site in Duncan, Arizona. And there's very
so this
few,
is another example of the same artist?
Yeah, just one artist. You know, I have all 3 of the examples of hers that exist. And like I say, it was all from one site. And there's hardly any other Gila polychrome bird effigies. And this, again, is...
Those are large for bird effigies.
They are. And I think these... But this... Are these... I'm not even sure if they're mallards or quail. One is a female and the other is male. You see the red beak?
I see the red beak, but I also see it looks like mallard lines on the neck.
Maybe they are mallards. And that would be the male and this would be the female.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and go to the other side of the house. So we're basically back where we started in this wonderful, beautiful room. And this is a spectacular collection of Sityaki.
Yeah, Jetato and Sityaki, a prehistoric, going into proto-historic Yellowware. Central Arizona, the Hopi Mesas. So the Jetatos are just 2-color, brown on yellow, and the Sityaki are the 3-color. And that...
Brown, yellow, red.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So some of these are, some of the great examples of
I love the hand.
Yeah. This was a real popular motif. I'm not sure how many different artists did that, but you'll find hand collections in every museum in the country that have Yellowware. I've seen at least 12 or more, but different artists. This is just much more articulated than many of the other hand
It has more of
paintings.
like a mimbrical feel to it too, because of Like, you wonder if they did hand painting or tattoos.
Well, what they would do is they would mask out when they're doing splatter bowls. And Matt Thomas...
Their hand.
Well, or they would just cut out like with leather.
Oh, yeah.
And place it as a mask. Then they would do their splattering and pull that off, then do the painting of the actual object. Here's another, well, these are both examples of that splatter technique. There's, a mask.
Yeah. And they're also culturally that did ladles.
Yeah, they did. Mm-hmm. Now, see, here's an example where it was probably painted first and then splattered over the entire design. And they were the only culture that did any of this splatter stuff. It never caught on with anybody else. And it came late. I mean, well, late, like 1350, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, in closing, that the first question I get asked about, how do I know these are all women? Well, the first real obvious example is, here's a Memz bowl. And it's the only known bowl where there's a woman making pots and painting her pots and being distracted by her child. You don't see any male figures involved in pottery making. And to further document that statement, when Coronado first made contact with any of the prehistoric pueblos in 1540, all the ledgers, all the letters, all the documentation from 1540 through all contact, whether it was Hispanic or white into the pueblos up here in New Mexico, there's no reference ever to a male artist until 1915 when Maria Martinez
and Julian
started painting her pots. That's the first known reference. When you see even in the 1800s, it's always women at the rail yards.
Oh, yeah.
At the train stops with pots. So that's, if you extrapolate that information backwards.
Their cultural dances, the pots on the heads, mostly women. So I'd like to thank Billy for sharing this with us, his collection. It's very beautiful, and would recommend his book on prehistoric pottery, women artists of the ancient Southwest. It's very academic, but also very beautifully photographed. I'd like to encourage everybody to also go to our website. If you want to see this podcast, go under the menu bar under podcast. This will be on our website. Plus, you can find it at bluerainprintshop.com if you just want to do a drop and ship. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Billy.
Yes, thank you.